Okay, well, it doesn't take much imagination to think of the problems that come with a global supply chain. That is, when your suppliers and your subcontractors and so forth are scattered literally all over the world. So to protect your brand, every new supplier and vendor has to meet your quality and safety standards to make sure that your brand isn't damaged by an inferior product. And this is particularly true if you think about it in consumer goods, where the margins are so little, and losing any fraction of your audience is really a major thing, right? The problem is that unless you have some sort of global supply chain management function in place, no single functional group owns the management of the processes that are required to create a finished product. And on top of that, data is often poorly shared among stakeholders, if it's even shared at all. So our next guest is a man who has seen this firsthand. Ron Brown is the retired Chief Information Officer for Global R&D and the Global Nutrition Group at PepsiCo. So Ron, welcome to the show this morning.
Great to be here with you today.
Thanks, Ron. So what do you see as the single biggest problem for companies that have a global supply chain?
I think you can sum it in two words. It's ever-changing. Most companies continue to expand through acquisition or going into emerging markets, which creates huge challenges for them as they have to then start creating a new supply chain, if you wish, new suppliers that tend to be immature. The investments necessary to get them to the standard. They may meet the quality standards of your raw materials, but can they do it consistently? And also you have to look at the stability of the markets going forward. I mean, you enter some emerging markets today, and are they stable? So what kind of investments can you make as a company into that because of that instability? So I think it's the dynamics that are occurring that really create the largest risk for any global company today. And how do you manage through that volatility, as I see it?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, you're retired from Pepsi, CIO. Pepsi, huge company, obviously a huge supply chain. What problems did Pepsi face with their supply chain, and how did they address those issues?
You started earlier with some standards talking about NIST, but the reality is just getting supplier visibility creates a huge challenge. Who are our suppliers? What are they producing? Where are they producing from? It's down to the farm potentially, or where that market is going to. Is that data readily available? And the answer is, in fact, probably not in most situations. And when you look at the sheer number of suppliers, based on the fact that innovation is driving so much, the number of suppliers, unique suppliers, continues to grow, which creates another challenge for them going forward. I think PepsiCo faces that same challenge just like any other global company does, is it continues to expand logically. Every time you have an acquisition, you buy into those suppliers as well. You have a huge qualification process that has to take place on an ongoing basis. At the same time, you have economic pressures going on in any business today, doesn't matter which one or how big. As a result of that, you're always looking to optimize your supply chain because there's a huge cost in that. So it's just so dynamic. And I think it becomes a challenge for any organization to really drive partnership in that. So there's real value in winning together and building those relationships on the longer term. And that's a challenge for any company, including PepsiCo.
Ron, a couple of minutes ago you mentioned risk in passing. I want to maybe redirect you on that a little bit, because risk is, hey, it's a buzzword we've all been hearing about and talking about it. Certainly the new version of ISO 9001 is going to be addressing risk in a very specific way. Every company deals with risk, of course, and if you have a supply chain, you're dealing with risk multiplied many times, but especially, I would say, of course, for food and beverage. I mean, how does a company like Pepsi, for instance, deal with issues of risk when the product is one that people are going to be ingesting? What does that add to the program?
So risk can be defined in many different ways, one of which is, do you have a reliable source, if you wish? So you have to manage that risk, and that source goes to actually where it could be grown, or that country or with that geography. Is there risk associated with that? So any good supply chain is going to manage that risk and make sure they have options, if you wish, or alternatives, and start managing out of those risk areas potentially going forward. Throughout your supply chain, you are actually looking at quality at every point, and you're looking for that weakest point, if you wish, to ensure that the raw material being created or manufactured by a supplier meets the quality specification? Do you have a spec that's right? Are you doing their testing, just like you mentioned earlier, the same test, the same methodology in the same way? Is there validation throughout your supply chain? Is your conversion process being managed effectively? Unfortunately, in most businesses, they tend to be siloed applications or siloed information, and you need to make sure you can focus on the right thing to ensure that your supply chain is secure from the start all the way through to actually distribution or to the consumer itself. And so it's a very complex, it has to be looked at risk situations as far as every product has a different risk profile, if you wish. So do you need to spend more time and emphasis on a higher risk raw material or a risk product? The answer is yes. Do you have kill steps throughout your process, especially in a manufacturing situation? Are there kill steps which are eliminating certain risks or pathogens or whatever you may say? The answer should be yes, and are they being validated and consumed? So, I mean, it's a very complex question and an answer, if you wish, but it takes everyone across the supply chain to make it work, which is part of the challenge because no one function necessarily owns the total end-to-end supply chain. And they may own components of it, but holistically, a company has to look at it in totality to be successful.
Hey, Ron, in your article, you say that collaboration and accountability, especially accountability, I would say, is a key step to ensure the success when you're working on a global project like this. So we're talking about risk, particularly in food and beverage. When you say accountability, what do you mean by accountability?
Like in any project, it could be a quality project, it could be any initiative. At the end of the day, I believe in following a solid RACI. So there's a responsible, accountable, and there needs to be clearly understood what roles everyone needs to play. I think a lot of projects, particularly IT projects, tend to fail when the IT organization in any business takes on a responsibility that they really don't own at the end of the day, because they really are delivering a capability that needs to be aligned to a business process that is effective and in place, if you wish. And it's important that the business has clear ownership of those processes, the execution of those processes, the change management of those processes, or an IT solution that can actually support it to be effective. And I think that's the big difference that has to occur in many businesses today, is really establish who owns certain components. That partnership needs to be there so that you can win together. Unfortunately, many projects, be it on the business side or the IT side, fail because people take on the wrong accountabilities when at the end of the day they really don't own it, if you wish. The other thing that I see occurring, at least in my experience, is everyone has an opinion. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, who's accountable for it? And that person should have the opinion that matters necessarily. I mean, I may have an opinion on food quality or food process, but am I qualified? Do I own it at the end of the day? And the answer is probably no. I happen to be a consumer, so I may have an opinion, if you wish, but the quality department or the whatever organization needs to take accountability for what they own at the end of the day. And I think that's the important thing people need to understand, is establish that responsibility, the accountability, and the roles everyone needs to play in a project, in a partnership of a project to be effective and to execute effectively.
Okay. Well, Ron, thanks for joining us this morning. And actually, we're going to talk a lot more about this next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, yes, the 24th.
At 11, we got a slide there at 11.
Yeah, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll have Ron joining Dirk right here to talk about managing product quality throughout the global supply chain. Again, that's Sparta Systems and Quality Digest next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
And Ron, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
We'll see you Tuesday.